Hi, everyone. Welcome to join our seminar today. My name is Alan. I am the host today and also the teacher in charge of the reading and writing program from Harmony Plus. In today's seminar, we're very glad to invite Mr. Benjy to talk about how to increase students' interest and ability in creative writing. So before starting our seminar, let me introduce our company briefly. Harmony Plus is an official partner of and institutions in the United States, such as UC Berkeley, Stanford International Research Institute, and the San Jose State University. We are committed to providing top-notch programs for outstanding local and international students. We offer a variety of programs at Harmony Plus. First, the academic program, such as reading and writing, AP Chemistry, AP English Literature and Composition, SAT, ACT Prep, College Essay Pre-Writing. Then the soft skill enhancement program, such as Future Entrepreneur Challenge, Public Speaking. Also, professor research programs, such as Data Strategy, Strategic Marketing, Internet of Things. We also provide the college counseling services known as future planning. I'd like to elaborate on some of the programs. For example, the nonfiction reading and writing online program, which is tailored for grade 5 to 8 students. This program is targeted for students who would like to develop their interest in reading nonfiction texts and also to improve reading and writing skills for a narrative, informative, and persuasive style of writing. We also have the Future Entrepreneur Challenge online program, which is tailored for middle and high school students. The students will receive one-on-one guidance from entrepreneurs and VCs. They will even have the chance to land internship at high-growth startups. At Harmony Plus, we adopt a hybrid learning platform that combines online with offline, school with students, theory with practice, and education with services. So today, we're very honored to invite Mr. Benjy to join our seminar. Benjy graduated from Yale University with distinction. He studied creative writing with Michael Cunningham, the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction winner. He was in USC's Master of Fine Arts program in screenwriting. He has extensive experience teaching SAT, ACT Prep, AP subjects, college essays and applications, and creative writing. Benjy is very passionate about helping the students. He loves imparting knowledge and solving problems creatively and effectively. So Benjy, would you like to say hi to our audience today?
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. Alan, would you like me to share the screen now?
Okay, so let me introduce the agenda first. So
Sounds
today
great.
we're going to talk about the benefits of creative writing for students, the ways to develop interest in fiction reading and writing, the ways to improve fiction reading and writing abilities for students. Benjy will recommend some books and short stories to the students, introduce some publications and competitions, and also talk about the creative writing summer camps. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end of this seminar. So if you have any questions during the seminar, you can leave your comments in the Zoom chat box. We're going to take a look at your question and have Benjy to answer your questions. So now I'd like to invite Benjy to start the lecture. So Benjy, can you share your experience about how you developed your passion for writing? So we would like to hear some about your experience.
Sounds great. Hi, everyone, again. Thank you again for having me. I'm Benjy Steinberg. I started my interest in creative writing at a very young age. When I was in 3rd grade, I had a teacher named Ms. de Blasio. I'll never forget her. And she told us to unlock the creative writer within. Now, this was really powerful. She assigned us this huge challenge at that age of writing short stories. And I was so inspired that I ended up writing in 4th grade a 175-page novel called The Zekel Hajj of Dragda. It was this pirate odyssey. And it was very fun. And that is sort of what birthed my interest in creative writing. And I've been doing that ever since. So I grew up in Palo Alto, and I went to Gunn High School, Henry M. Gunn High School. When I was there, I edited the literary and creative writing magazine, and my creative writing got multiple awards and was published in several publications, including the Young American Poetry Digest, River of Words, Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, and the Palo Alto Short Story Contest. I went from there on to Yale University. And while I was at Yale University, I had the privilege of being accepted into possibly one of the most competitive seminars at Yale, which is called Reading Fiction for Craft. It's with Michael Cunningham, who won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in the late 90s with his novel, The Hours, about Virginia Woolf. And this program that I will be teaching with Harmony Plus, the creative writing program, is actually loosely based on Cunningham's course. So what I'll be doing is actually giving your kids and the students a window into one of the most competitive and sought after courses at Yale University. I went on, oh yes, and while I was at Yale University, I wrote and directed a few short films. My interest in film began, and the films garnered awards at over 15 film festivals across the country. So I kept on doing that writing, and I was very inspired by Michael Cunningham. I know some of you want to know how to get your kids interested in creative writing. I'll get into that later, but Michael Cunningham taught me imparted some great tools for me to sort of rebirth my interest in creative writing. I went on from Yale University to live in Los Angeles, and I worked for some writers on a TV show, but then about a year later, I started at USC, and I began the screenwriting program at USC, which, according to the Hollywood Reporter, was voted the #1 screenwriting program in America. My script placed in a top writing contest, one of the top writing contests worldwide. So it's been quite a journey, but I've learned to love, and I've learned to hopefully get good at screenwriting and creative writing and prose writing. And I'm really, really, really excited to share my knowledge and my enthusiasm and passion with your kids. So I would like to talk a bit about the benefits of fiction reading and writing, or creative reading and writing. Of course, there are many types of creative writing. There's playwriting, there's poetry, there is screenwriting. But in the course I'll be teaching with Harmony Plus, I'm going to focus on prose fiction writing. So fiction writing is extremely beneficial, from literacy to reading and writing skills, to college admissions, to life skills. But first, let's talk about literacy. So I've put on this slide an excerpt from one of the stories that we'll be reading in this course, called 11 by Sandra Cisneros. And the story is about a girl who is humiliated in class when she's put on the spot by her teacher. And she's further humiliated when she cries. And it sort of follows her through this journey. Now, this is an excerpt from the story, and the first sentence reads, "Only today I wish I didn't have only 11 years rattling inside me like pennies in a tin Band-Aid box." Right. So from the critical thinking perspective, the reading angle, we might look at this and try to infer what this imagery, what this simile, like pennies in a tin Band-Aid box, says about the protagonist, the hero, the narrator's feeling in this story. And the students, through working with language and understanding what these images and words mean, might be able to understand that it shows that the protagonist is feeling empty and insufficient and embarrassed. Now, from another angle, we might be able to look at it in a creative problem-solving way. And the way you're going to use creative problem-solving is as a writer, because in this course, we're going to both be reading and writing our own short stories. So from the writing perspective, let's say you're the writer of this story and you want to introduce the conflict, which is what happens after the equilibrium or the exposition. You try to figure out, okay, every story has conflict. How are we going to introduce this conflict? And here, the writer introduces the conflict by saying, today I wish I was 102 instead of 11, because if I was 102, I'd have known what to say when Mrs. Price put the red sweater on my desk. Now, this is when the conflict begins in the story. It's when Mrs. Price put the red sweater on my desk. But the author very cleverly combines that with the protagonist's feeling. Today I wish I was 102 instead of 11. Right. Problem solving is very often overlooked, but it's actually a major factor in constructing a compelling story. How to introduce the conflict in a compelling way. How to order each part of the story in a way that evokes emotion and meaning. Right. Additionally, not only can it help with these cognitive skills, but it can also just help with general reading and writing tools, such as vocabulary. A student might not know that only can also mean but by understanding that word in the context of the story, they can understand this new meaning of this word. It can help with idioms. I work with a lot of SAT and ACT students who might not know certain idioms or certain phrases that are unique to the English language. And reading and writing fiction can actually immensely help with just understanding the unique ways to inflect the English language. Additionally, grammar, which sort of ties into idioms, and generally an ear for the English language, especially for non-native speakers. This is an immense tool. When you read nonfiction writing, you can get that to an extent, but creative writing plays with the language in such a way that you can see the language in all of its different sort of shapes and sizes. Great. So, fiction reading and writing is also extremely beneficial in terms of college admissions. This is an excerpt from the essay that helped get me into Yale when I was 18. And I really owe it to creative reading and writing that I was able to write this. This is about my love of jazz and the different ways in which jazz is useful to me. So this is an example of how creative writing can really make your personal statement or personal essay for the colleges just really pop out. Additionally, it's helpful on the SAT, ACT, sort of tying into how it helps with an ear for the language. Each test has one prose fiction passage. And understanding creative reading and writing is absolutely crucial to acing those passages. Additionally, if you want your kid to take advanced English courses, even including AP English Literature and Composition, this is extremely important. And more than anything, creative writing is a very strong extracurricular. I'll go into this in a moment, but these top colleges really look for well-rounded students. Yes, you can be strong in certain disciplines, but if you don't balance it out with creative disciplines, especially one like this, which is very literary and shows a lot of book smarts, they won't see this Renaissance man or Renaissance woman, as the term goes, which they want. And it can be especially beneficial if you get published or win competitions. And I'll go into the different publications for teenagers and young adults, and as well as the competitions a little bit later. Now, another huge benefit of creative reading and writing are the life skills that come with it. Firstly, and you might have heard this before, creative reading and writing helps with empathy and theory of mind. Theory of mind is the understanding that others hold different beliefs and opinions than yourself. Creative reading and writing introduces you to new ideas, new perspectives, and new worlds, and it really expands your mind in how someone can live and how society can work. in how families might operate, in how governments might operate, in how cultures might operate, which ties into also curiosity. Creative reading and writing makes you, and the best writers are often very, very curious about the world. And thus, creative reading and writing can inspire new interests for you. Now, this picture on this slide is of a writer's room in Hollywood. Now, in a lot of creative writing, but especially in screenwriting, playwriting, writers work in teams, anywhere from 5 to 6 to 20, because they're making these massive, expansive shows and stories, right? So this also applies to prose fiction writing, because one can never really write in a vacuum. You honestly need to bounce your ideas off of other people, and that's what we'll be doing during the last 2 classes of this course. We'll actually be doing a high school level creative writing workshop where everyone will read each other's work before the workshop, and we will, in a very positive and encouraging environment with very encouraging framework, critique each other's work and try to make it better. Now, this is where it also ties into perseverance and resilience. Creative writing is not easy, it's challenging, but that's one of the great things about it, because first drafts, especially first drafts and early drafts of a short story, are hard. You might write something and it doesn't come out as you expected it to come out. But creative writing will teach you this incredible life skill, which is to persevere through those early drafts and to eventually get to something that is polished, polished like, you know, a fine stone that you can admire. And that also ties into resilience. Now, of course, lastly, creative writing is extremely beneficial for imagination. It allows you to imagine innovations that may not have previously been in society on Earth. And in this way, as with all these other points, creative writing applies not only to writing, but it applies to everything, no matter what type of job your kid ends up getting years down the line. They will be able to use these tools to creatively problem solve, to work with others, to persevere through obstacles, and to be incessantly curious and innovative with anything they encounter. Now, this is another reason why top colleges love to look for this well-roundedness, love to look for this excellence in not only maybe more sort of prescribed disciplines like history, math, science, but also things that are more mind expanding, like creative writing. Great. So now going back to Ms. de Blasio in 3rd grade, she told me to unlock the creative reader and writer within. What does this mean? Well, years later, I read this book by Elizabeth Gilbert, this great author, that is called Big Magic, and it's about just writing and life. And Elizabeth Gilbert said, "Do you have the courage to bring forth the treasures that are hidden within you?" Now, that's a very powerful statement, because what it says, and what I believe as well, is that everyone has a story to tell. Everyone has these gems, these treasures that we can tell about ourselves, about our families, about the way we grew up, about the different conflicts we may have had in our lives, and shape them into stories that not only entertain, but also give people a better understanding about the world. Now, the question begs itself, how do we unlock the creative reader and writer within? So I think the most important tool to do this are finding books, stories, authors, and genres that you absolutely love. And I kid you not, I truly believe that for every student, for every kid, for every adult even, there are books, fiction books, that we will fall in love with. There are books for everyone. So what I've tried to do in this course is create a diverse set of readings, 7 short stories. And I'll go into them in a little bit, but hopefully one of these stories will just really grab your kids' interest. And what you want that story or that author or that genre or that subject even to do is to inspire your kid to write. For me, when I was in Michael Cunningham's class, I read this author named John Cheever. He was this American author who wrote in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And something about his voice, something about his humor, his wit, the way he looked at society and the world just grabbed me. And I hadn't considered writing professionally before then, but when I read him, when I read that first sentence, when I read that first paragraph, that first short story from him, I couldn't get enough. I bought a book of his short stories. I read hundreds of his short stories, and all of a sudden I thought, okay, I can do this. I am inspired by this. I want to write like this guy. So hopefully, and I truly believe, using this course and just in life, if you consume enough books, if you're active enough about seeking out the right material, your kid will find a book, a story, an author, or a genre that just really grabs them and that inspires them to write. Now, my second point on unlocking the creative writer within are writing diaries, journals, and dream diaries, because writing is a practice. It really is a muscle. It's like exercise. You want to do it every day. And at first it might seem challenging, daunting, intimidating, but at the end of the day, once you strengthen that muscle, once you make it a practice, something like meditation or exercise, you'll get better at it and you'll start to have more fun. Because at the end of the day, creative writing is fun. You get to write anything you want. You can create characters that the world has never seen. You can create people, you can create families, you can create societies, even if we're talking about science fiction or fantasy, you can create worlds that people may have never thought of. And you could start doing this by just writing about yourself through diaries, journals, also dream diaries even, because dreams are free association and you might get some of your best ideas even from your dreams. Now, in this course, the Harmony Plus course, we are going to be using writing prompts. Writing prompts, especially visual ones, such as photos and videos, are extremely useful for inspiring and just getting that creative voice to come out. What I mean essentially is a student looks at a picture. It might be a picture of an abandoned bedroom. And I say, okay, write what happened here 20 years ago before it was abandoned. Or it might be a video of a polar bear on an ice cap. And I might say, write what's going on from the polar bear's perspective. So with this multimodal learning, your kid will totally be able to just jump in and enjoy. Now, very, very important and not to be looked over is encouragement as well as positive feedback. Encouragement allows the creativity to flow. Fear is the enemy of creativity. I often say this because fear can hold people's creativity back. What I think is that every act of writing, a writing teacher once told me this, every act of writing is like standing on a cliff, falling backwards and hoping that you'll fly. And oftentimes you do fly, but it's scary. It's scary to put your emotions on paper and take risks with characters and worlds and conflicts and not know if they'll work or not, but you just have to do it. So in this course, I'm really gonna stress encouragement and positive feedback for the students. Yes, I will be pushing them, I will be making their writing better, but none of that, the writing doesn't get better if you don't have that baseline of recognizing what is special about their voice, because that's what's going to really push them to write more and more. Now, I really want to dive into improving the fiction reading and writing abilities. The most important thing, as I was saying, is just to actively read and write. But as you read and write, these tools can help. And these tools that I'll go over, the 6 major ones, each one will be the subject of a class, and we'll really dive into these and learn how to really master them. Now, debatably, the most important element of creative writing is character. So it's also one of the coolest things about creative writing. You get to thoroughly conjure, magically make a human appear on page. Or if it's fantasy, a spirit, if it's sci-fi, a robot, but something that behaves according to human behavior. And you do that physically, you do that emotionally, you do that verbally, you do that behaviorally. They should walk and talk like a real human does. And that's easier said than done. But through this course, we'll have the students write these characters, and we'll workshop, okay, are they realistic enough? Okay, are they compelling enough? Compelling means we want to read more of them, and they interest us, and they captivate us, and they entertain us. One great way to create a very compelling character is through a desire. Every great character in the course of literary history has wanted something really, really badly. And the source of conflict, and thus the source of structure, is that they have a hard time getting whatever they want. And that's what makes a story. But first, you need a character who wants something and will do anything to pursue that. Great. Another thing that makes an interesting, multi-layered, complex character is inner conflict. A character might want to do something, but there should be something inside them too that's holding them back, right? Say a character really wants to go out into the wilderness and go camping, but they're also afraid of going out into the wilderness. They're afraid of being in nature with none of the resources of civilization. That's a very strong inner conflict. And I think of that as a rubber band. Sort of these two sides of a character are pulling back and forth. And then finally, for a character, you want very strong development. That means the character changes through the course of the story. As they battle these obstacles, these hurdles, as they're jumping over these hurdles to their desire, they are learning and they're growing. And by the end of the story, they should have learned a lesson, and they should be a slightly different human being. Great. Now, another really important element of creative writing is voice. Every author that you've ever read has a voice, and voice boils down, it's hard to exactly define, but it boils down to style, rhythm, music, humor, suspense. It can have all of those things. And it's sort of the way the narrative voice sounds. It can also be how the narrative voice makes you feel. But I'm going to teach kids in this course to develop very specific voices, because just like everyone has a story to tell, I truly believe that everyone has a voice, an inner voice, what their writing sounds like on the page. Not only am I going to teach the kids to find their voice, but I'm going to teach the kids how to strengthen their voice, because the best voices are very muscular. They're very convicted. They're very strong, and they just pop off the page. They almost make the words three-dimensional because they are so loud and clear. Another very important part of creative writing is structure. Structure boils down to the ordering of information. Like we looked at in 11 by Sandra Cisneros, the author introduces the red jacket, which becomes the conflict in a very specific way. And I will break it down into several pieces, starting with exposition, then conflict, then rising action, then climax, then falling action, and then resolution. There are these parts of the story, and we'll look at how you can shape each part of the story and how you can even switch around the order to sort of play with what is tried and true. Nice. Okay, so another really important element is description. Not only are you trying to conjure characters and places and worlds that are vivid behaviorally, but you're also trying to really make the reader imagine that they're there, because that is a way in which we read. We imagine things visually as we're reading. So you want these very specific details. And even when you get down to specific details, you want to make them evocative of mood, and that ties into voice. How do you want these details to make your reader feel? You can describe that abandoned room that I was talking about in that visual exercise in 1,000 different ways. You can describe it as scary. You can describe it as beautiful. You can describe it as peaceful. You can describe it as apocalyptic. You know, there are so many ways to inflect, and that really boils down to description. Inflection are sort of the odds and ends of creative writing. That boils down to tone, tense, past, present, or future, and point of view, first person, second person, or third person. And there are many different parts within those. But inflection are the little ways that you can tweak the voice, character, structure, and description. And then, of course, you have beginnings and endings. Now, beginnings and endings are extremely important in creative writing, because when you're reading a short story, as we'll be doing in this class, we'll be writing 3 short stories that you can then submit to publications and competitions, because hopefully by the end of the course, they will be that good, and I'm sure they will be. The beginning is extremely important because you want to hook the reader in. You want the reader to read that first sentence and say, I'm in. I'm going to keep on reading this story. There are many ways to hook the reader in. It can be a compelling character, it can be a compelling voice, it can be a very vivid image that just sucks us in and makes us say, okay, this is fascinating. I want to read more. Now, endings are also important because they are the last image or last thought you're leaving the reader with. And oftentimes, a reader of a short story, a reader of a piece of writing will most likely just remember 2 things, the first sentence and the last
所以你可以自己安静读书吗？
Right. So, I was talking about the different short stories we'll be reading in this class, but I also wanted to recommend some novels that could inspire your children to unlock the reader within and writer within. So, I've picked these to not only be educational, make your writing and reading stronger, but also to be fun. Because at the end of the day, what's going to make your kids want to read and write are things, books, short stories that are fun. Holes was a great book that I read maybe in 4th grade. It's about a boy sent to a juvenile facility in the desert after being falsely accused of theft. It's a very realistic novel, but it's also funny. The characters are very colorful, and it has a very rich world with strong mythology. Tom Sawyer is a classic by Mark Twain. It's about a boy who adventures in a small town in Mississippi, again, putting you in a very specific place. He's also this very specific character who's mischievous and will hopefully just really compel the reader. The City of Ember is a sci-fi novel about 2 friends trying to escape an underground city in a post-apocalyptic future. It's a young adult novel. House of the Scorpion is also set in the future. This one is very interesting. It's more for grades 6 through 8 because it deals with slightly more adult themes, but it can be a great way to introduce your kid to these adult themes. It's also set in the future, and it's about a clone trying to find his own identity. His Dark Materials is a great trilogy of books by Philip Pullman, and it is about an 11-year-old who tries to save her best friend, who's kidnapped and taken into parallel universes. And then, at the most advanced of these, there is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and that is a murder mystery set in rural England. It's by the very famous author Agatha Christie, and it can be a great introduction to the genre of mystery, which is a very prominent genre in fiction. Now, let's talk about the short stories we'll be reading in this class. I tried to make them as diverse as possible in terms of subject matter, in terms of characters, just so your kid can be sure to find something that they love. And hopefully they'll love all of them, because these are all very fun stories. But they also challenge the students, both in terms of language, grammar, character, conflict, and will really make the students think about what makes a great story, and also sharpen and strengthen the writing skills. So All Summer in a Day by the very famous author Ray Bradbury is about a class of students who do not live on Earth. They live on Venus. And on Venus, the sun only appears once every 7 years. And it's about this class of students in their classroom as they're waiting to see the sun for the first time in many of their lives. Harrison Bergeron is also somewhat of a sci-fi. It's about a world in which everyone is handicapped by the government. So the government, if someone is too smart, the government makes them less smart. If someone is too athletic, the government makes them less athletic. So it's sort of this dystopian future. And it's about this one teenage boy named Harrison Bergeron who breaks free from his handicaps. And he tries to become the dictator of this world. But then, well, you'll have to read it to find out what happens. Seventh Grade is a short story about a boy trying to seem cool in middle school. Rules of the Game is about a young girl whose mother pushes her to become a chess prodigy. So it follows this young girl who doesn't know how to play chess. And by the end of the short story, she is this chess world champion. Raymond's Run by Toni Cade Bambara is about a young girl training her disabled older brother to run in a marathon. Girl is about a young girl's mother trying to teach her traditional gender roles. And finally, 11, what we already went over, is about a young girl who has a humiliating experience in class and has to deal with the humiliation and some of that turmoil of being an 11-year-old starting to go through puberty. Now, I talked a bit about, or I mentioned, publications and competitions. Now, I participated in some of these in high school, and I definitely think it helped with my college applications. The Palo Alto Weekly has a short story contest that's open to all ages. There is a very prestigious journal open to all ages called the Adroit Journal. The Scholastic Art and Writing Awards are open ages 13 and up. There's a publication called Teen Ink that is ages 14 and up. There's the Young Arts National Arts Competition, ages 15 and up. And then finally, the Bennington Young Writers Awards, age 15 and up. Now, these are just some of them. There are actually a lot of publications and competitions out there, but these are some of the most prestigious ones that if you get into, if you win, if you're published in, it'll look especially good to colleges. And I will encourage students to use whatever stories they write in this class to submit to those, and I will help them submit those short stories. Now, there are also some summer camps, such as this one, that you can use shorts that you have to apply to, but you can use your short stories from this to apply to them in the future. Stanford Pre-Collegiate Summer Institute has a creative nonfiction, fiction, and poetry camp. Same with Smith College Creative Writing Workshop. And there are actually many of these across the country, but they tend to be more for high school students, and they require having a portfolio. In other words, samples of writing beforehand so that you can get in and study with some of the top creative writers in the world and some of the top creative writing faculty in the world at these colleges. And so whatever short stories you write in this class can help you get into those, which in turn will be fantastic programs to do over summer's future. And I would just finally like to talk about the course a little bit. The creative writing course curriculum that I will be teaching is grades 5 through 6. Like I mentioned, with the short stories, the content will be high school. So we'll really push your kids to understand creative writing and fiction writing at a higher level so that they can really, really excel in school when school resumes in the fall. I will give thorough and prompt feedback, very extensive notes to really push them and make sure that their creative writing is at a top-notch level. The class size will be small. And at the end of the creative writing course, you'll come out of it with 2 page-long short stories and 1 longer short story that you can submit to publications, competitions, additionally camps. And one great thing about this course is it uses a multimodal approach, which means not only text, we're not only reading, but we're also going to be looking at films, TV shows, photos, interactive exercises. We'll be doing some group exercises. It's going to be very fun, collaborative, but at the end of the day, it's going to really strengthen the writing and reading. And of course, like I mentioned, there will be a collaborative workshop in the last 2 classes where students will learn how to respond to each other's work and how to collaborate in a creative environment. So that is it for my part of the presentation. I'm going to hand it back to Alan, and I look forward to answering all of your questions.
Thanks so much, Benjy. Yeah, I'm really inspired by hearing your experience, and also you recommended a lot of great books for the students. I think the parents are looking forward to having their students read some of the short stories and also some of the novels. So like we mentioned, we have offered some writing programs during the summer. For example, we target the 5th to 8th graders and offered 2 writing summer camps. The first one is the Creative Writing Boot Camp, which is from June the 10th to June the 29th. So we're going to have 9 sessions in total, starting from June the 10th. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we're going to have the creative writing course instructed by Mr. Benjy. And for those students who are more interested in starting from the nonfiction reading and writing, we have another camp that starts from the June 15th to July the 3rd. Also 9 sessions each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, targeting mainly on the nonfiction reading and writing. So Benjy, you mentioned a lot about the creative writing, right? And for the nonfiction reading and writing course, can you describe the difference and also like how they are targeted for different students groups?
Of course, thank you. So nonfiction reading and writing is broken down into 3 units. At the end of each unit, we write an essay together, or each student writes an essay, and I give very thorough feedback, and we do 2 drafts of that. Now, the 3 units broken into 3 classes each are narrative writing, so writing about oneself, then informational writing, writing that teaches people, often known as expository writing, and then persuasive writing, which makes an argument similar to an op-ed that you might see in a newspaper. So you're going to come out of that course with 3 pieces as well, except they're all going to be nonfiction, things that have actually happened in the real world. And it should also really strengthen the students' work in terms of nonfiction reading and writing.
Okay, I say parents still, already have a lot of questions for us. So for all of the Zoom audience, if you have any questions, you can leave your questions in the Zoom box. We are going to have a Q&A session shortly. So I'd like to also mention that for the middle schoolers from 7th to 8th grade, we also have a nonfiction reading and writing program for the 7th to 8th graders, which will start from the end of this month and till the end of next month. So a lot of the parents are concerned about how to engage and how to join our program. I'm going to share this QR code for everyone. So if you are interested in joining our program, you can scan this QR code. So later, we're going to share the PowerPoint slides to this group, and also Benjy will send me some reading materials. I will also share it to the participants in this WeChat group. So feel free to join us. And now I see we've got a lot of questions. So let's answer some of the questions from the audience. Is that okay?
Sounds great.
Great. So some parents ask that, how do we get the short story materials, used in the class? So will you use that in the class?
Yes, exactly. We will be using and teaching and collaborating not only through Zoom, but also through Google Docs. So everyone will simultaneously be on Google Docs. What I will do is not only will I have pasted the stories onto the Google Docs so that we can read them together in class and discuss them as we go along and then at the end, but after each session, I will be attaching the short story as a PDF to the email to all students and parents.
Great. And Some parents want their kids to continue learning from June even to July. So if they start studying from our creative writing program, I mean, can they join a next level program or vice versa?
I would love to teach another program, especially, yeah, maybe in those months, maybe even in August. I would love to keep on teaching not only this age group, but also older age groups. So yes, I'm very open to that.
Right. So if students start learning from creative programs, they can also like start the nonfiction reading and writing afterwards, right?
Exactly.
Great. And some parents ask that how they can like increase the students to read more and even to start writing some of the diaries because some students, they don't feel like writing or reading a lot.
Exactly. Exactly. I would say go, you can start from this list and I'll give a brief description. I can send out an email after this with a brief description of each book, and just really, you can look over these books with these descriptions with your kids. And if any of them even piques their interest, maybe just order that book from Amazon. Additionally, there are various online resources. Amazon Books on the Amazon website is great. They have different groups and categories of books that you can look at depending on what subjects and genres your kids are interested in. Additionally, there's this fantastic website called Goodreads. I don't know if people know about it. It's also an iPhone app, but iPhone or Android app probably. And people rank books, and there are thousands, or rate books rather, and there are thousands of ratings. So you can, if you are, maybe afraid of getting your kid a book that they're just going to read the first few pages of and then throw away, what you can do is you can go on Goodreads with your kid even and look at these reviews. There are often thousands of reviews for the books, and read those reviews. And if the kid seems to really connect with what people are saying, then maybe that's a good fit.
Great. So I'd like to answer some of the questions from the parents. So how many students are there in each class? So we are the small sized classroom. So there are normally 8 to 10 students for each of the class. And also some students asks, is the 5th to 8th graders for the incoming grade or not? So I also want to ask Benji that how do you evaluate the students' grade? I mean, if they are some excellent 4th grade students, or they are in the 6th grade or 7th grade, can they also join the program?
I would love to include them. I think that age range, we want, because this is a workshop, because this is collaborative, we want to encourage as many different perspectives as possible. And of course, someone who's 12 is going to write something different than someone who's 9, because they just have different ways of looking at the world. So I think as many different ages within a certain range of ages are possible, then that will enrich our experience in the class.
Great. So yeah, so one parent, thank you for the book list that you shared. And so they think they are the awesome book list. And also,
Awesome.
and also one parent asked, he has the concern about the topics that you will cover or
Right.
mention in the class. I mean, will you talk about anything related to politics?
Yeah, great question. I would like to focus on these sort of older, tried and true readings that are not as, I mean, they've been published within the past maybe 30 years. I try not to get too political because I don't want to, bring any of those, any beliefs that anyone might disagree with into the classroom. And so it's more about creative writing and more about the different stories we tell. And yes, they will always reflect on the world, and we can get into those discussions, but I would like to mostly contain it to, in other words, what works or doesn't work within the story, what makes it compelling, is it working as a story?
Yeah, so we will well select all of the topics during the class, so don't worry about that. So for the teen boys or girls, do you have any recommended books or book list?
Yeah, I'd say many of those books that I talked about could also apply to teen boys and girls. However, if you'd like, I could also compile a list after this to share with high schoolers. because those are also at a different level. And again, there's so many books out there, but there's some staples that will just really inspire your students. So I would love to
Yeah.
compile that.
Thanks so much. So after you compile that, we will share also the list to the uh, WeChat group. So you can
Great.
join the WeChat group by scanning this QR code, and we will share a lot of reading and writing materials later. And some parents also ask, are there any programs for preparing college application essays? So yes, we do have some college application and essay preparation programs in Harmony Plus. You can also join our WeChat group, and we are going to contact you and offer you some of the tailor-made programs for your kids. And some of the parents ask that, will our summer camps in July a little bit different from the one in June?
In terms of the nonfiction, or yes, I mean, the one I'll be teaching in July will be a nonfiction reading and writing boot camp. And then after that month, I might also, I hope to teach more creative writing that can either be catered to 5th to 6th graders, or even to 7th and 8th graders, or even high schoolers.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So for some of the students who are very passionate about reading, I mean, they're not, that interested in writing. So how can they, keep the balance?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great question. And I think it really boils down to what I was mentioning about finding those books or short stories that inspire you. And once you find that and it locks in, you might read a book about, read a book about a boy going on an adventure through parallel universes. And you might think, okay, I want to write sci-fi about young adults going through parallel universes. So it really boils down, I think, at the end of the day, to reading and being inspired by that.
Great. And how to improve the logic, flow, vocabulary, and the sentence structure.
Yeah, again, I don't mean to sound redundant, but it's so true. I think that reading with many of my SAT, ACT students, I teach a lot of non-native speakers, and I tell them, okay, read, because eventually you're going to develop an ear. You're just going to be able to hear what works and what doesn't work as a sentence. Yes, you can try to teach that through books and through memorizing vocabulary, but at the end of the day, it's about reading. And what I did for maybe 15 years of my life, ages 5 through 20, every time I read a book and every time I came across a word I didn't know, I would write down that word on the inside cover page of the book. So if you look at some of my books, I'll have like 50 to 100 words that I just don't know. And then what I would do is, before, iPhones and such, I would look it up in a dictionary that I had on my desk. Now I have a dictionary app and I would just look it up. So it's sort of like, find something that you enjoy, and as you're reading, just actively read and just pay attention. And again, that just comes from the curiosity. Like, if you care enough about a book and you come across a word you don't know in the sentence, you're going to be so hungry to know what that word means, because probably that word will affect what's happening to the main character, to the conflict, to the world.
Great, thanks so much. So I know that some of the audience joined our seminar today pretty late and didn't get the chance to see all of the seminars. So you can also join our WeChat group. We're going to send the recorded video link later after we upload it to some of the platforms, and we can share to some of the audience who were late for the seminar. And Benji, one parent asks, are there any movies that will inspire teens to write? Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. There's some I can think of. One of them, the Robin Williams movie, The Dead Poet Society. Another great, another great movie I think for teens is Stand By Me. It shows sort of the discovery of adulthood and coming of age, just things that teens can really connect to, but also things that are fun. A lot of people, and especially teens, like to see movies that are funny, but you want to find a good balance of movies that are funny with also that are also meaningful. And if you guys would like, I could certainly compile a list of movies that would be very inspirational and make the viewer say, okay, I want to create stories like this.
So you're also going to use some of the movie clips in our class, as
Yeah.
the right?
Yeah, I can go through, let me just look at the list of
I show you for the monument session.
some of the movies that I'll use clips from are Up, Lord of the Rings, Stand By Me, Elf, The Wizard of Oz, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, The Princess Bride,
Okay.
Toy Story 3. Those
Yeah.
are just some, and there are many others.
Right, just to name a few, right? 'Cause
Exactly.
we use a lot in the class as the prompt.
Yeah.
It will give the students a lot of motivation. And I think some parents are like concerned about, for high school and even for college students, right? So if they want to prepare for some of the future writings, how can they start preparing now?
In terms of admissions essays, in terms of expository essays, because there's so many different types of writing. I mean, you'll be doing a lot of fiction. You can do a lot of fiction writing. You can do a lot of nonfiction writing. I'd say both of these courses will be great preparations because yes, we will really in each lesson dive in to a certain type of writing and a certain element of writing, but they're also very comprehensive. They'll teach you the many different types of writing. And at the end of the day, reading and writing, it's all building this muscle. And no matter what type you're doing, informs all the other types.
Yeah. So you mentioned about, students will do the writing in and after class on their Google Doc, right? So we
Right.
know that feedbacks are very important for students' writings. So
Yeah.
how would you give the students feedbacks?
So I will do it on their Google Doc where they will write the stories. I will not only make line corrections in terms of the smaller stuff, but oftentimes the bigger, more important stuff are elements that occupy not only sentences, but also paragraphs and also entire stories. So in my mind and then on the page, I'll break down for them what is working, what is not working, especially using those 6 elements we talked about and telling them, okay, you can tweak this. You can make this character more compelling by giving them a clear inner conflict. You can give them more obstacles. You can use more vivid description here. So I will write this all in their Google Doc and give them very thorough and comprehensive notes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'd like to also mention that for each of the essay, students will start from the brainstorming, writing the outlines, and then they're going to write the first and also final draft with the feedback from Mr. Benjy. So yeah, it is through these revisions that the students can get the extensive growth and they can really learn from each of the revision. And
exactly.
Right. So I think due to the time conflict, we're going to answer maybe one more question. So thanks so much, Benjy. So can you give me, some examples of the stories you wrote when you were a teenager and how you learned from that?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So I remember one was about, I tended to write sort of darker stuff. I wrote a family drama about a family who gets into a fight at a restaurant in public and then makes up. That was something that was actually ranked in the Palo Alto Short Story Contest. I learned a lot about that. Actually, even going back further, the first short story I wrote as a teen, I had to learn the lesson of action. It was sort of a stream of consciousness story about a guy walking through a foreign city. And when I submitted it to contests and stuff, the feedback I was getting was that, okay, there's not enough action going on. It's too interior. We're not seeing the obstacles that that this character is overcoming, and what is this character's goal. So from there, I decided, okay, I'm going to make these stories very active. The second story I wrote that did get more traction, more awards, was about this family who gets in this fight and then has to make up in public at a restaurant. And that was a great experience because I felt like I had started to master these tools.
Wow, very interesting story. Yeah. So thanks so much, Benji. And thanks for the seminar, and also thanks for sharing your experience to us. So I think the parents and also a lot of the students are looking forward to seeing you in the future seminar and also future classes.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me on. Thank you for having me, everyone. And I really look forward to teaching your children and inspiring them.
Okay, yeah. So see you. Bye, Benji.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Okay, so thanks everyone for joining our seminar today. If you have any more questions, or if you are interested in receiving the recorded links of the video and also some of the recommended book list, please scan this QR code to join our WeChat group so we can have further discussions if you have any questions. And I look forward to talking to some of your kids and some of you. So thanks so much. See you. Bye.